Welcome to today's deep dive. We're diving into Europe's economic landscape, and frankly, we've got some big questions about its future.
Yeah, Europe's future.
Yeah, exactly.
Big questions.
Yeah, we'll be looking at a report from Mario Draghi.
Oh, okay.
He's the former president of the European Central Bank,
hmm
and he's issued a pretty stark warning
Okay.
about Europe falling behind the U.S. and China.
Hmm.
Potentially accounting for less than 10% of global GDP by 2050.
Wow, that's that's a really significant drop. And what's striking is that this warning comes at a time when Europe is already facing a lot of challenges. You've got
Yeah.
political instability in France, potential job losses in Germany,
Right.
and there's this general sense of apprehension among investors. It
Mhm.
really does feel like Europe is at a crossroads.
Yeah, not exactly a sunny picture, is it? But before we get too doom and gloom, I think it's important to understand, the nuances of the situation, like what's actually contributing to this economic slowdown.
Right.
Draghi mentions a productivity puzzle in his report.
Yeah.
What does he mean by that?
So productivity is essentially how efficiently an economy is using its resources to generate output.
Hmm.
So you can kind of think of it this way. Imagine you have two olive farms,
Okay.
one in Italy and one in, say, California.
Okay.
Both produce high-quality olives, but the Californian farm uses technology, modern farming techniques, and they can produce more olives
Oh,
with the
okay.
same amount of land and labor.
So they're getting more out of it.
Exactly. That's higher
So
productivity.
it's not just about working harder, it's about working smarter.
Exactly. And that's really where Europe seems to be lagging behind.
Yeah.
The report estimates that Europe's economy is about 18% smaller than it could be due to this productivity gap.
Wow.
And that translates to a staggering $3 trillion shortfall.
Hmm.
To kind of put it in perspective, the combined value of some major U.S. tech companies is roughly equivalent to the world's third largest GDP.
It's a massive amount of potential wealth
It is.
that Europe's just missing out on.
Yeah.
But why is Europe falling behind on product?
Well, there are a couple factors at play. One is the slower adoption of new technologies, particularly in traditional industries.
Okay.
So you can take the automotive industry as an example. While companies like Volkswagen are investing heavily in electric vehicles now,
Right.
they were relatively slow to adapt to this shift compared to tech-driven companies like Tesla.
So it's almost like they were caught off guard by the speed of innovation in the digital age.
Yeah, and that kind of highlights another key issue. Europe's tech sector hasn't grown at the same pace as the US or China.
Mm.
And one reason for that is this lack of robust venture capital markets.
Hold on. For those of us who aren't financial wizards, can you explain what venture capital is and why it's so important?
Sure. Venture capital is funding for startups with high growth potential, but also high risk.
Okay.
You can think of it as fuel for innovation.
Okay.
Without enough venture capital, it's hard for startups to really get off the ground and scale up their operations, which can stifle innovation in a region.
Right. So Europe needs more venture capital to support its tech sector, but is there anything else holding them back?
Well, some argue that regulations, while well-intentioned, may be hindering innovation.
Okay.
There's a balance to strike between protecting consumers and workers
Right.
and fostering a dynamic business environment that encourages risk-taking.
Mm.
And some argue that Europe's regulatory environment is currently tilted too far toward protection, which can make it harder for new companies to disrupt those traditional industries.
So it's not just about catching up with the US and China in terms of technology, it's about creating the right environment
Yeah,
for that innovation to flourish.
exactly.
Okay, now let's zoom in on two of Europe's biggest economic players,
Okay.
France and Germany.
Yeah.
They're often seen as the twin pillars of the EU, but both seem to be facing some pretty serious headwinds.
Yeah.
What's the situation there?
So France is struggling with high levels of debt and a wide budget deficit, meaning they're spending more than they're taking in. This, coupled with political deadlock, is making investors nervous.
Nervous investors aren't a good sign. How can we see that nervousness reflected in economic data?
One way is to look at the risk premium on French debt compared to German debt.
Okay.
Think of it as a measure of how much more investors demand to be compensated for the risk of lending money to France compared to Germany.
Okay.
Back in December 2012, during the European debt crisis, that risk premium spiked significantly.
Mm.
While it's not as high now, it's still a clear indication that France is perceived as a riskier investment than Germany.
And Germany, they're renowned for their manufacturing prowess, but I'm sensing trouble in paradise.
Even Germany is feeling the pressure. They're facing potential job losses in traditional industries like car manufacturing.
Oh, wow.
Volkswagen is closing factories, which is kind of a powerful image that even the most robust sectors are vulnerable to this changing economic landscape.
Yeah, the closure of those Volkswagen factories is a pretty powerful image. It really drives home the point that the global economy is in a state of flux. And what's concerning is that France and Germany are the economic engines of the European Union.
Right.
If they're struggling, what does that mean for the rest of the bloc?
That's a crucial point. The EU is a highly interconnected system. When France and Germany sneeze, the rest of Europe tends to catch a cold.
Right.
Their struggles have ripple effects throughout the entire bloc, impacting trade investment and overall confidence.
So the stakes are incredibly high. We've got the productivity puzzle, the lagging tech sector, and now the struggles of France and Germany. Is there any good news in all of this?
Well, before we jump to conclusions, let's look at another key indicator of Europe's economic health. The euro,
Okay.
its performance against the US dollar, can be seen as a barometer of confidence in the European economy.
And I'm guessing that barometer isn't showing sunshine and rainbows right now?
The euro's performance against the dollar has been, let's say, less than stellar.
Mm.
The fact that it has fallen to parity with the dollar on several occasions is a cause for concern for economists and policymakers.
Hmm.
It symbolizes a decline in Europe's global economic standing.
So a weak euro equals a weak Europe. But aren't there benefits to a weaker currency? Like making exports more competitive?
There are potential benefits, but the symbolic significance of a currency losing value shouldn't be underestimated.
Hmm.
It can fuel anxieties and erode confidence. Some populist movements in Europe, like Germany's right-wing AfD party, are even using the euro's weakness to argue for leaving the currency altogether.
Oh, wow.
That kind of instability is the last thing Europe needs at a time when it's already facing so many challenges.
So it sounds like a perfect storm brewing. Is there any light at the end of this tunnel?
Despite the challenges, there are some glimmers of hope. Europe has some significant strengths, particularly in precision engineering and manufacturing.
Oh,
Regions like northern Italy, southern Germany, and Switzerland are known for their craftsmanship and the production of high-quality goods.
so even though they might be lagging in the digital realm, they still excel in the physical world.
Precisely. And this expertise in building complex, high-quality things could be a major asset in the future, especially as technology becomes even more sophisticated.
That's an interesting point. So while there are certainly dark clouds gathering over Europe's economic landscape, there are also some potential silver linings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've kind of laid out the key challenges facing Europe's economy, but now we need to delve deeper into the potential paths forward.
Yeah.
Where can they go from here?
Yeah.
Can they turn these challenges into opportunities?
That's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Stay with us. Welcome back. We painted a somewhat somber picture of Europe's economic outlook.
Yeah.
Now let's shift our focus and explore some potential solutions. Is there a way for Europe to navigate out of this economic rut and reclaim its position on the global stage?
Well, Mario Draghi in his report outlined several key areas where Europe needs to focus its efforts. One, perhaps not surprisingly, is fostering innovation and entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Remember those venture capital markets we discussed? They need to be strengthened to provide more funding and support for promising startups,
Yeah.
allowing them to really blossom and grow.
So more investment in innovative companies is crucial, but is that enough? Does Europe need like a complete cultural overhaul to become more risk embracing, like Silicon Valley?
While Europe may have a reputation for being risk-averse, I wouldn't say a complete overhaul is necessary. Change is already happening.
Okay.
The European Union has launched initiatives like the European Innovation Council, which aims to provide funding and support for groundbreaking innovations across various sectors. It's about building on existing strengths and adapting to the new realities of the global economy.
That's encouraging, but let's be realistic. Europe is facing some fierce competition from the US and China,
Right.
both of which are significantly ahead in this tech race. Can Europe realistically catch up?
It's true. The US and China have a head start. But remember, Europe has its own unique strengths to leverage.
Right.
We've talked about their expertise in precision engineering and manufacturing.
Yeah.
Combine that with a renewed focus on innovation, and Europe could carve out a distinct role in the global technology landscape.
It's not about mimicking Silicon Valley, but forging their own path. What could that look like?
Exactly. Europe could become a leader in fields like advanced manufacturing, robotics, artificial intelligence, and sustainable technologies.
Okay.
These are areas where their precision and quality could really shine.
Mhm.
Imagine European-made robots known for their reliability and precision, or AI systems developed with a strong emphasis on ethical considerations.
Those are fields that are only going to grow in importance, giving Europe a chance not just to catch up, but potentially lead in the industries of tomorrow.
Exactly.
But for all of this to work, won't Europe need more than just innovative companies? What about political will and coordination among its 27 member states, each with its own interests and priorities?
You've hit on a crucial point. The European Union, despite being a unified force in many ways, is still comprised of individual nations.
Right.
Historically, when faced with a common threat or opportunity, European nations have demonstrated the ability to come together and achieve remarkable things. Think about the creation of the euro, for example.
Yeah.
That was a monumental undertaking that required a high degree of coordination and compromise.
So there's precedent for collective action, but what would that look like in practice in this situation? How can they move from individual interests to a unified vision for Europe's economic future?
It starts with a shared vision. European leaders need to ask themselves, what role do they want to play in the global economy? What are their strategic priorities? And how can they leverage their collective strengths to achieve those goals? Aligning policies, coordinating investments, and pooling resources are all essential steps.
That sounds like a tall order. Are there any concrete examples of what this coordinated action could look like?
Imagine a pan-European strategy for developing digital infrastructure, a continent-wide initiative to invest in artificial intelligence research, or a collaborative effort to accelerate the transition to green energy. These are just a few examples of how a unified approach could position Europe as a leader in the industries of the future.
These are ambitious goals, but certainly game-changing if they succeed. However, I imagine there will be resistance to giving up national autonomy and control. It's not easy for nations to cede power, especially when it comes to economic matters.
You're right. Navigating the tension between national interests and the need for greater European integration is a constant challenge. Ultimately, it comes down to a fundamental question. Do European nations believe they are stronger together or weaker apart?
That's a profound question, and one that gets to the heart of Europe's identity and its place in the world. The answer will shape not only their economic future, but also their geopolitical influence in the decades to come.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In today's interconnected world, economic strength translates into global influence. Europe, with its history, culture, and resources, has the potential to be a major force on the world stage.
It's a pivotal moment, a crossroads where difficult choices need to be made, but amidst these challenges, there are also incredible opportunities for growth and transformation.
Now, in this next segment, let's explore how these challenges and opportunities translate to a personal level.
Yeah.
What does Europe's economic journey mean for you, our listener, on an individual level?
We've really explored the big macroeconomic forces at play in Europe, the productivity puzzle, the challenges in the tech sector,
Yeah.
the political and economic headwinds facing key players like France and Germany, and of course the implications of a fluctuating euro.
Right.
Now let's bring this conversation closer to home. How does all this impact you, our listener, on an individual level?
That's the crucial question, isn't it?
Yeah.
We often talk about economics in these abstract terms, but it ultimately boils down to its impact on people's lives. And in today's interconnected world, what happens in Europe doesn't stay in Europe.
Right.
It has ripple effects across the global economy, impacting everything from trade and investment to technological innovation and even geopolitical power dynamics.
So even if you're listening from another continent, you're still part of the story.
Absolutely.
Europe's economic journey, its successes and failures will have a tangible impact on your world.
Yeah, the decisions made by European leaders, businesses, even consumers will have repercussions far beyond Europe's borders. If Europe successfully adapts and innovates, it could create a ripple effect of new opportunities, new markets, new possibilities for everyone.
But on the flip side, if Europe stumbles and fails to adapt, could that create negative consequences for the global economy?
Certainly. A weaker Europe could lead to slower global growth, increased instability, and potentially fewer opportunities for individuals around the world. It's a high-stakes game with no guaranteed outcome.
Okay, that paints a pretty stark picture. It makes it seem like we're all just along for the ride, powerless to influence these larger economic forces. Is there anything individuals can do to navigate these changes, or are we all just at the mercy of these global trends?
I wouldn't say we're powerless.
Yeah.
While we may not be able to single-handedly shift the direction of the global economy, we're not just passive observers.
Right.
Our individual actions, both big and small, contribute to the larger economic ecosystem. The choices we make as consumers, the careers we pursue, the investments we make, they all matter.
So you're saying that even amidst these massive macroeconomic forces, individual agency still has a role to play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By being informed, engaged, and making conscious choices, we can influence the direction of our own lives and contribute to a future that aligns with our values.
That's empowering. It gives us a sense of control even when facing these seemingly insurmountable challenges. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Europe's economic crossroads, what key takeaways would you highlight for our listeners?
First, recognize that Europe is at a pivotal moment, a crossroads that will shape its future for decades to come. Second, understand that the challenges and opportunities facing Europe are deeply intertwined with the global economy. And finally, remember that even though we're talking about macro-level economic trends, individual actions still matter. We can all play a role in shaping a more prosperous and sustainable future.
It's a powerful reminder that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves, but we still have the power to make choices that impact our own lives and the world around us.
And with that in mind, I'd like to leave our listeners with a final thought. We've discussed Europe's need to adapt to embrace the digital age, to carve out a unique role in the evolving global economy. But what role could you play in this transformation?
Mm.
What unique skills, talents, or perspectives do you bring to the table? And how can you leverage them to not just navigate the changes ahead, but to shape a future that is both fulfilling and prosperous for yourself and the world around you?
That's a great question to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Europe's economic landscape. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and a renewed sense of possibility even amidst the challenges.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep shaping the future.